So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste and a very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 110th episode. In the last 109 episodes, more than 1,500 school leaders have participated on this very platform, shared their ideas, opinions, observations, innovations, and what all new and amazing they're seeing and they're doing in the K-12 space. Or to put it simply, what's going on in schools. And since this is a bilingual platform, so we'll be using two languages, that's English and Hindi. If you want to use a third language, you can, but I won't get it. So try sticking to any of these languages so that it's easy for everybody to comprehend and discuss. This, just before we begin, a small introduction of the platform. This is a roundtable, so we have some school leaders here, some experts from the education sector, some experts from the sustainability sector, some experts from the higher education sector who will add in their experience to what do they think is happening in schools and the way the education sector is evolving. Because right now when the world witnesses a wave of change that's coming out of a pandemic, the education sector especially held 2-3 more new responsibilities in its kitty that actually befalled onto him, not by choice, but by force. Schools at this point of time across the world did one thing with absolute surety and accuracy. They kept the anxiety of parents, students, and the community around them at bay. A school is right now not just teaching its students, it's teaching the whole community around them. Because parents are there on the online calls. There are even grandparents in online calls. So the classroom size of a school has quadrupled. So today, the 60 minutes that we have with you all, in this format, we'll try to know what exactly is failing in the system. Is it the students or is it the system itself? With a focus on the Indian K-12 education sector and trying to know what do you think, how are innovations going to happen? And more importantly, putting in a little bit of crystal gazing twist to it, we'll try to have some bhavishyavani or forecasting from you that where do you see the education sector going in the next coming 5 to 10 years. So thank you so much everybody once again for joining this platform. This is a timed platform. So once your speaking time is over, you might get muted. If you get muted, please don't get offended. It is just to finish this activity on time and so that we all get to hear everybody and enjoy the next 60 minutes that are with us. Thank you so much. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 110th episode. And let's talk about our students failing or the system. So let me first invite the first speaker for today who brings in an experience of sustainability, higher education, a mix of the French education sector and the Indian education sector, Ms. Pauline, who is a sustainability director of Techno India Group, which is a group of schools, colleges, universities based out of West Bengal in India. I suppose it's owned and run by the Roy Chaudhary family, two brothers, Gautam Roy Chaudhary and Satyam Roy Chaudhary. So we have today with us Pauline, who's the sustainability director for that group and the co-founder of Y East, Kolkata, West Bengal. Right now she's joining us from some city in Paris, I suppose somewhere, and I'm not very sure. So let's now hear it from Pauline. What does she think is failing in the whole setup? Is it the students? Is it the teachers? Is it the institutions? Or is it the system? So thank you so much, Pauline, for joining in. The next 3 minutes are yours. Please unmute your audio and a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Daksh, for this very warm welcome and invite. I'm very happy to be on this platform. I hope I am audible. It's a brilliant framework that you've set up with Burb, and I'm very happy to be part of this roundtable. The topic of the day is to know where to put the responsibility on the fact that our education system around the world, but including in India, is currently not ideal. I've always thought that this kind of blaming conversation on how and where to find responsibility is always a little tricky and might lead to a certain waste of time, because we should not be looking for someone to blame. We should be looking for solutions to act fast. And I think in this particular framework, on this particular topic, there's a shared, differentiated responsibility that we need to see. It's not on students only, it's not on teachers only, it's on each and every one of us. It's on management, it's on students, it's on teachers, it's on parents. We have to see that education as a whole, especially if we talk about K-12 education, is really a shared responsibility and is not limited to the school frame. So that's my first point, is we have a shared yet differentiated responsibility in the whole story: managers, teachers, students themselves, etc. That is the first point. The second is we live in a world now where most of the learning opportunities are out there, available and accessible in very different ways. We have seen, especially with the COVID-19 crisis, that a lot of digital resources have been made accessible at the hand of the student. Of course, schools have to be the triggerers of curiosity and the providers of resources to facilitate learning. But what I'm seeing is the student has a greater and greater responsibility to self-learn through all of these resources that are now even more easily accessible to them. So now there's a shift of educational institutions and their role, not as lecturers of and providers of content, but as facilitators of curiosity and responsibility given to each of the children. So I think there's this shift from the teacher to the guide that needs to operate in the system. And last point, and this is back to my responsibility as sustainability director at Techno India Group, I think we're going through kind of an ethical crisis where our educational systems are not able to go beyond mathematics as learning. We have to include ethical behaviors and ethical learning and issues related to social and environmental impact into what we teach to the students, not only what we teach, but also how we behave around them. So I think these 3 points would mostly be what I wanted to say today. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pauline, for giving the discussion an amazing start. To summarize what you said, you started with that rather than finding who to blame, we must concentrate on finding solutions. So in the last, these many episodes that Blub World has done, we've talked and found out many such solutions and innovations that have been happening across schools across the globe. And we've shared those ideas with many more schools. So just to give you a small bit of a background about this, there are nearly 200 new ideas that Blub identified from more than 1,000 school leaders. And right now, these 200 ideas are being experimented by at least 500 schools across the world to see how many of these ideas are feasible, sustainable, scalable, and that will remain with us even when the pandemic comes to an end and this lockdown finally unlocks for education. So the next where you took the discussion was shared responsibility, that yes, it's a stakeholder driven ecosystem. It's not an ecosystem where there are a lot of passive stakeholders. Every stakeholder is very active. So we need to, understand the sharing of the responsibility. Learning opportunities are now accessible because content right now just got democratized in education and it got a lot free, lot easy. And schools are now just mere triggers of learning. They cannot do the whole process because now they're not the beholders of the most respected or coveted content, because content just lost a little bit of criticality in the education sector. What achieved criticality was engagement. The way you deliver it, the way you guide it, the way you keep students engaged with yourself. Self-learning, a much bigger responsibility. Content to engagement shift happened very swiftly when the pandemic actually came and we were hit by a lockdown. And yes, the most important point, or where you typically concluded your discussion, that we are going on or right now experiencing a very deep ethical crisis because what we are teaching are just computational skills, or where the way you put it, just mathematics. And the problem is maths does not create humans. And finally, we need a society with a lot of humans, not with a lot of computationally skilled mathematicians. So thank you so much, Pauline, for adding these amazing perspectives to the discussion. Let me invite the next speaker for today, who will add the bird's eye view to the whole discussion. He's somebody or comes from an organization that has been helping a lot of schools in its own ways of consulting, advising them, making them easy to run, operate, looking at their business models, and contributing to the ecosystem in a very different way. Let me now invite the next speaker for today, Dr. Murali Krishna Chakirala, Chief Operating Officer of School Ventures from Bengaluru, Karnataka. Murali Krishna ji, over to you for the next 3 minutes. Please unmute your audio and a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, my dear fellow speakers. My point is, the current education needs a drastic shift from the current curricular point of view. In a nutshell, if I have to say, in our current system, reading is dominated by learning, memory dominated understanding, institutionalism dominated free thinking and expression. We give answers to the questions. We are not encouraging students to ask questions so that he can learn on his own. And our orientation, our emphasis is more on left brain activities like STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, than the right brain operations like critical thinking, creativity, arts. These are the things which we are neglecting. But if you see Rabindranath Tagore's model, sometime back when he started Shantiniketan, he has given equal priorities to both the things. That's why the students from that institution, wherever they went in whichever activity they have taken up, they stood examples in the society. Even if they had to shift from their one particular job field to another field, they remained successful because they had a learning of everything. So here academic intelligence is being imparted than creative intelligence. See, that is the crux of the issue. Entire shift of current curricular strength has to be shifted to that gear so that everybody, as my earlier speaker said, stakeholders will be made participative in this. Teachers had to play a major role. The current teacher, the kind of a training which we are imparting to the teachers is not properly oriented. Teacher has to become a mentor. He is not only a teacher. See, 25% of the student's life is in institutions. Remaining 75%, he has to come to the world and then win there. All the information which we have to provide in the schools have to equip the student to face the vagaries of the world, and then we have to make him successful there. That means the probable things with our experience, probable difficulties going to face in the world, we have to equip him with examples and peer examples, and then teachers. They have to make him strong so that he can win there. It's not getting about marks. Sadly, what is happening is communication skills, clarity in thought, teamwork, and then empathy. These are the traits which wins a student in the society in given any opportunity. We are not imparting those things, but we need to incorporate those traits also in our learning system so that along with the subject knowledge, along with the intelligence subject knowledge, we are making a leader. We are not training him to get 98% in the particular grade. We have to make him a leader. We have to make him a winner so that world becomes his field. He can play anywhere. I'll tell you one example how we are now spoiling the children over years. You ask a child, A stands for what? It is a general question everybody asks. 98% of the students come with an answer, apple. 2% only differ. What is happening to the ant daily they are playing in the home? What is happening to the animal toy which they are playing right away?
Thank you so much, Murali Krishna ji. The first slot of time was over, but we'll try to come back to you again. You had some amazing thoughts that you were putting through. To summarize what you said and to take the discussion forward, the left brain focus of the curriculum is a big challenge. We right now need to think on a curricular shift from a left brain focused curriculum to a right brain focused, or rather creativity, critical thinking, life skills, and making students much more empathetic and, most importantly, resilient. Because a lot of students, when we talk to right now, while we're talking on these platforms or in any other ways, students are not at all resilient. They have a very laid back attitude. The first failure that they hit becomes a permanent roadblock, and that's where they leave the challenge for the world to handle. And I think that's something very sad to know about when we talk of students, because student is somebody who actually has the power to redefine the society, because that's what the future generation is looked up to do, that they're the ones who will make the world a much better place than what we are living in right now. You talked about Swami Vivekananda's model of education, where it was not just about a lot of mathematical skills. It was about being able to surf through life with ease and with comfort. Teacher to a mentor, 25% of a student's life goes through institutions and 75% in real life. But the challenge is our institutions are not ready or are not making these students ready to face the real life. And finally, the focus of education should right now be shifted to a very nice statement that you said, let's make the world a playground for students to play. और इस बात को बच्चों को समझाना बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है कि दुनिया बस एक खेल ही है और वो खेलना आपको स्कूल में सीखना है. Because the problem is we take ourselves too seriously to live in a humorously happy way, finally. So let's not take ourselves very seriously and give the students that kind of mental, physical freedom that they're able to perceive the world with a lot of humor, with a lot of fun, and with a lot of ethics. So thank you so much, Murali Krishna ji. Let me now invite the next speaker for today, Mr. Ramakrishna, who's the former principal of Oxford Concept School from Amalapuram, East Godavari district from Andhra Pradesh. Ramakrishna ji, a very warm welcome to you. The next 3 minutes are yours. So please unmute your audio.
I'm very much delighted to be part of this program. And let me be first thankful to the organizer, Mr. Daksh Gaur. And today's topic are student failing or the system. The title itself throws light on how and what we talk about in the present context and what is the root cause for failure as we pronounce, and what are the shortcomings of the students, the shortcomings of the system in the present context, right? In the present world running fast with scientific advancement, we are running with scientific advancement. So am I able to you all?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
And we do not know what extent this scientific advancement and what are the extents. Both we don't know. But when science inventions are introduced into the education system, we can proudly say the education revolution has been initiated by, no doubt at all. Across the world, there are many changes depending on various factors. Here, these factors include geographical factors, geographical differences, cultural differences, and food habits. These are the main dominating factors on the learning habits of a particular student. Student mean here not only university level or the high school level, right from KG to PG, we can say. So if we talk about education system that which will enrich our skills in an order, does the system really enrich or lag behind? This is the question. So here, based on a question on the psychologist and philosopher, cognitive scientist, Noam Chomsky, cognitive scientist, and he is called as the father of modern linguistics. In his book, The Global Structure and the Linguistic Theory, he starts this book with a question, a logical question, where our entire education system depends upon. What I feel, as far as I am concerned with the education system, he denotes here a child born with acquiring skills or learning skills. This is the question. So based on this question, if our system is prepared or designed, then it is perfectly executed. The learner never fails. I mean the student never fails. There is no chance to use the word failure. As we are saying pass or failure, we don't need to use. So a child, every child has the acquiring skill or the learning skill. The system should decide. So system should be designed on the parameter, what type of skills the student had. So here we need to focus on the education system of the present world. If the system bridges this gap, where the acquiring skills or the learning skills, if the system can bridge this gap, definitely student is going to pass everywhere. Pass in the sense he will acquire or at least learn, because all students are not same because of geographical differences, cultural differences, and food habits.
Thank you so much, Ramakrishna ji. you started the discussion with a very apt point of view of where to find the root cause of failure. Because when we talk of failure, rather than first finding out who to blame, let's find out why is it really happening. So the way you have put it, that there are 3-4 types of differences that we actually, see in the whole ecosystem that we have around us, whether it may be geographical, whether it may be habits, whether it may be intellectual, and the system should find a way to bridge this. And just some days back, we had one of the school leaders who actually articulated this very thing in a very subtle and simple manner, which was personalized assessment. Let's correct the way you assess children, and then everything will fall into place. Since the assessment is on the wrong points or the wrong pointers, that's why failure really happens. Because students, or what we say, the learner, is somebody who has an intrinsic learning capability or curiosity, which we first kill and then open big design schools across the world to think on design thinking and again find that childlike curiosity. That's the biggest challenge with the education system that we have right now in India. Even when the new education policy gets introduced, the focus again, as Murali Krishna ji said, is on the left brain. Let's find and talk a little more about the right brain, because finally, when a pandemic of this sort comes in, the biggest problem happens in finances and economy. And the only way that anybody can actually fight this through is through the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence that he has with himself, or the kind of resilience that he has as an individual. Because at this moment, it is really sad to know that in a country like India, which is shifting to online education in a dramatic space, we can still see that the government data shows nearly 65% of India's learning population has not attended a class since the lockdown began. They have been absolutely disconnected from education for a simple reason, that there's no infra, there's not the right content, and most importantly, when we talk of the rural India, the biggest incentive or the epicenter of the motive of the way the complete system of rural education happens in India is not education itself. It's not the outcome of education even. It's a simple midday meal. And that midday meal cannot be delivered virtually. So that's where the biggest challenge has, arose, that we need to find the solutions on taking education to a much better, practically achievable result, so that students, parents can relate to it as an opportunity rather than just a responsibility. So thank you so much, Ramakrishna ji. Let me now invite the next speaker for today, Mr. Azhar Golandaj, Founder, Director, New Horizon Education Private Limited from Kolhapur, Maharashtra. Azhar ji, a very warm welcome to you. The next 3 minutes are yours. Please unmute your audio.
First of all, I would like to thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you people. I'm here to express my ideas on the education system. The topic today is whether the student fall or the system fall. I would like to express my thought about the proper education system first. What is an education is the most important definition we have to think about. According to me, education is not making the students read and write, right? I think finding out the core capacities of a student is the most important aspect of any education. Still in rural areas, being a rural area student, I observe this very often, that parents always look at their kids and they always feel that if a child is able to speak fluent English, if a child is able to score good marks in academics, then he's a good child or he's a talented fellow. I would rather say there are a lot of other kids I've seen. They're not scoring well in the examinations, but they're very creative. Some of them are very good dancers. Some of them are very good. Some of them are mimicry artists. Some of them are very good painters. What I always feel is you should not judge a child by how many marks he gets in the examination. You've already seen there are a lot of areas of expertise where we can train our child from the childhood itself. And as a well-known writer has said, 90% of the people of the world, they die undiscovered, either by themselves or by the people who are they close to. And ultimately, this will be the parents and the teachers. So what I feel, if you want to find out the exact talent of a child, then you should have those assessments which to find out the proper talent from a child from the childhood. And rather than being behind academics, I know, some basic things are important. A child must speak. He must have some calculative knowledge of maths and all. I understand that. But then I've seen a lot of people in society, uneducated people, they're earning money, they're successful in their life. So connecting your academics with success, I don't feel there should be some good connection with this thing. So I'll conclude by saying that a child's core capacity has to be found out. And then we have to develop a kind of system where we have all the tools available to find out what a child is good at. And once you develop that, then the further scope has to be given to that. And when we do it, we'll have, as we say, 5 fingers are not the same. Everybody has the different attitudes. Everybody is unique, right? So the only thing is we have to find out that uniqueness, and a lot of our energy has to be put up in finding out that, because discovering the people should be the proper education. That's what I feel. Sadly, I cannot give you much more time. Maybe you people may not be agree with some of the views I have presented over here, but this is what my outlook towards the education is. Thank you very much, Gaur sir. You can proceed.
Thank you so much, Azharji. I think you gave a complete new twist to the whole talk, where we were actually talking about assessments. You gave in that the real core purpose of education should not just be to deliver content or deliver education. It should rather be to discover the person, that what he can do, or where that peg really finds its place of fitting in. We are trying to put in the wrong pegs in the wrong holes. And that's where the problem happens. And finally, the puzzle does not get solved. Because assessment right now is just on English fluency and academics. And the problem is only these 2 capabilities do not bring comparative and good success in life. The problem is we are just trying to map these 2 factors to everything in life, which is not holistic, which is not practical. And I think we must rather find ways of, again, personalized assessment and trying to assess what a child can really do so that he's able to achieve his full potential. Thank you so much, Azharji. So let me now invite the next speaker for today, Mr. Parvez Alam, who's the headmaster of Binnaguri High School from Jalpaiguri in West Bengal. Parvezji, a very warm welcome to the platform. The next 3 minutes are yours. Please unmute yourself.
And good evening to all participants. And I'm very, very thankful to the organizer who gave me an opportunity to express my views on the topic as you have mentioned today. So I remember very famous words of very famous words of Benjamin Franklin, he quotes like this: "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." In the light of this context, I would like to say that the basic pillar of educational system is the primary schools, where the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotion is not recognized by our educational system. Child have all the capabilities to be molded in a fruitful way, in a fine way, in different directions of different walks of life, but they are not recognized, they are not properly monitored by the educational system. Rather, the teachers in those schools are engaged in different work apart from their teaching, like midday meal, BLO duty, census, and other activities round the year. These are the failures of the system in the beginning. This is the time when the base of the child is to be built, but this primary fact is totally ignored by our educational system. Teachers are just mechanical in their teaching from 10 a.m. to 3:30 or 4:40 p.m. Just they are to come and go. They are to come and go this is the routine work. They do not find enough time, adequate time to prepare for the betterment of those learners coming from different socio-geographical and economic background. The effect is that, the result is that they do not properly inculcate, they recognize, and they mold their different attitude in a proper shape. In our education system, education belongs to central as well as
Thank you so much, Parvez. The first slot of time was over. But what you said was that teachers are doing everything other than teaching, and governments have actually involved them in a lot of administrative tasks rather than thinking on pedagogy, methodology, teaching techniques, teaching innovation, teaching ethics. So this is a new challenge that happens all across rural India, and majorly rural India, because teachers are involved in much more tasks than simply teaching and trying to innovate in that. So thank you so much, Parvez ji. And जहाँ पे आप बात को conclude कर रहे थे, the last leg of the discussion जो पूरा नहीं हो पाया, which was that in India, education is a concurrent subject in the constitution, which means that the central government and the state government both have control over education. So there is no one unified policy that runs across India in education. The center has one view of it, the states have a different view of it, and then the problem is these two views fight in execution, and the big, heavy execution elephant of Indian education does not move. And that's where we find a lot of difficulty. So till now, I've got the first, thoughts that all of you had. The next section of the discussion is where is it? It's a kind of an open floor for all of you. So I would again like to invite Pauline on if she wants to add some thoughts, or Murali Krishna ji, anyone who wants to add some more thoughts to the discussion.
One point that I think all of these talks highlight is that in the same way, we should be asking from the students to be able to learn themselves. Education is not only about learning, but it's about learning contents, but it's about learning how to learn. And I think that applies to the students as well as the teachers as guides, because what I've seen both in K-12 and higher education is the lack of critical thinking and proactivity from the teachers to actually go beyond what they already know and critically review the practices that they've been using over the past, I don't know how many years. And so I think this is all about this critical reinvention at the individual level on, okay, I have been doing this. I'm seeing that it is not working. How can I try? What can I do to improve that? And that implies the trust in the teachers that they should be able to experiment a little more beyond what the boards are expecting exactly in their own classroom. So that I think is very important. A bit of freedom, if I may say, and that freedom needs to be taken back and empowered through the teachers. Yeah.
It's very right that teachers must have some time to actually introspect, or rather individual rediscovery of yourself as a teacher, because this is something that we do not find a lot. A teacher, once he comes into the whole ecosystem, he has a rut to run through, and that rut does not finish. So that's something which we need to think on, making the job of a teacher more aspirational first, so that the good, the good portion or the good layer of the academicians come into education. Most of them do not come into education. They either go to industry. And the second problem that comes in, that even if they're in education, they're not able to rediscover themselves, reinvent, upskill, try to understand what's going on around them. So they kind of lose self-awareness in their profession, which is much more critical now, because content, as you rightly said, is not just what you're delivering in education right now. So Murali Krishna ji wanted to add something. So Murali Krishna ji, you can please unmute yourself.
Our total orientation of the education system is for a purpose of quantifying the knowledge. We are getting only marks is the base, quantifying the knowledge, but in fact, What is the difference, great difference between a student who is getting 59% and 60%? Not much difference. But this becomes a yardstick, no, for the further opportunities for the student who got 60. So here the entire assessment system, as one of my speakers now has pointed out, that entirely it has to be changed. Right from the beginning onwards, the student's merits, demerits, difficulties, and in his process of learning, interests have to be rated by someone who is qualified. For this, the teacher has to be empowered now with various kinds of training so that teacher becomes a mentor. Over years, then now this gets strengthened, and this student also comes up at par with a bright student in the class. So everybody will be at par. There won't be a lot of heterogeneity in any class given any day, as we are finding nowadays. See, traits, I only conclude with one example. Our system is getting kind of obsolete as we are not incorporating the changes and required for the society in our content. See, I only quote one example. One degree college has got a principle that disciplinary grounds, if a cell phone is confiscated, it will be given back to the student only at the end of the 3 years. When he is going out of the institution, then only he will be given back. Right away in the first year, somebody's cell phone was confiscated. Third year, while he is passing out of the organization, he is given. Unfortunately, the cell phone has become obsolete by then. The original confiscated cell was running 3 years ago on Android 1.6. Now it is 6.0 is going on. So he cannot use the cell phone. Though cell phone is in his hand, he cannot use it. But you haven't incorporated such kind of a change as the world requires, as the world progresses. Such changes are incorporated in the content every year through some means. Now that is helpful to the student. He is growing for the requirements of the society. With this, I want to conclude it.
Thank you so much, Murali Krishnaji. And yet, it's very important. And you gave a very apt example कि education जिस तरीके से इंडिया में काम कर रही है वो ऐसी है कि शायद आपका जो content था वो 1 साल पहले आपसे जब्त कर लिया गया था या forfeit कर लिया गया था, और जब वो Android इस कदर upgrade हो चुका होगा कि जब वो phone किसी काम का ही नहीं होगा. So this is a actually underlying paradox in education, that you are taught by one generation older than you, and as a teacher you are teaching one generation advanced to you. So there's always a 2-generation gap that reaches the final student. And the second inability that gets introduced by the system is a fixed curriculum. There is nothing, like an R&D department in an institution or an education institution where research was supposed to be the intrinsic, focus of the institution, has been absolutely lost. We do research just for the purpose of publishing a thesis and getting a PhD. It's not for the purpose of change. It's not for the purpose of innovation. And right now, what India needs is actually looking back at the objectives of things that you're doing them for, and not lose them, because we are losing the soul of all the activities we are trying to do in education. So I think most of the guests have spoken, and we had some amazing thoughts that came up in the platform. If anyone of you wants to add something, you can just raise your hand, and the next 1 or 2 minutes can be yours, because now it's time to conclude the call as we are nearing the 60 minutes end. And I suppose most of them have spoken. So thank you so much, all of you, for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks. Before the call comes to an end, Blub World works on a very simple concept. When we started Blub World as a publication, we thought that we must inspire children. And when we want to inspire children, the first thought that comes up is find the Mahatma Gandhis of the world, find the Martin Luther Kings of the world, and tell their stories to children. But the problem is that curriculum in itself has also gone obsolete. Because kids don't relate very easily to a Mahatma Gandhi, kids don't relate very easily to a Swami Vivekananda, because they've not seen him, they don't know him. So the way we found how to transcend inspiration into the next generation was to find peers who could inspire them. So Blub World works on a very simple concept of teens inspiring teens. Every month, we try to find out teenagers who are doing amazing work across the globe and share their stories with other teens. So before this call comes to an end, a very small story of one such teenager for all of you. He's a boy who lives in a village in Haryana. His father is a wrestler, Indian wrestler. His family is a family of wrestlers. And they did not have any inclination to any studies or any other sport. one NRI came back to that village, established a golf academy outside of their village. The boy joined that academy. That academy ran for around a year. The academy closed down, but the boy fell in love with golf. And his love for golf went on to finally create one of the world's first and most repeated world champions of golf. That teenager is right now the junior world champion of golf, comes from a village in Haryana, practiced golf in his own father's fields because there was no golf course for him to practice that. And that was the cover page of Blub World some months back. And that's Shubham Jaglan. He is the golf. Thank you people for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks. I hope you enjoyed the last 60 minutes that you spent with us. If you did, and if you want to attend the future sessions and add some more value to the world, because what we are doing is trying to create a repository of ideas through these videos so that a lot of education, best practices can go to each and every one so that ideas do not get monarched and they are democratized, and some of the best ideas find implementation in every single small little big village or city across the world. So thank you so much people. If you enjoyed, you can open your audio, say a big yes, and thank you so much for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks 110th episode. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be around, and I'll definitely keep in touch with your platform. I'll stay in.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Dakshji. It was your insight into the education now is much stronger than ours. I understand that because now you would have interacted with the various people, and now you have acquired a lot of knowledge which we need to learn from you. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much, Guru. The knowledge actually is something which should be free. Let's not monetize it. And I think that's what we're trying to do, because everybody has some small bit that adds a big bit to the world. Thank you so much, people. It's time to end the call. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
I would like to associate you in various programs. I would be willing to call. Thank you.